Implementing advanced workflows usually follows a 6-step methodology. It should be used as the best practice for how to define and implement advanced workflows and extract the right information from the workflow owner. However, there may be slight differences in the way the methodology is applied, depending on whether it's a process or project workflow. We'll expand on this later, but let's first look at what each step entails. The first step is running a high-level discovery. Here, we will ask the workflow owner some simple questions in order to identify their high-level scope of requirements and key knowledge points. The main topics covered in a high-level discovery are the main goals for moving to monday.com, the name of the workflow, the tools used, teams involved, and client needs. As you can see, these topics are then grouped together and summarized in a simple visual map. The next step is to identify the workflows which the client wants to build. The chances are your client will describe what they are looking to achieve as one overall workflow. However, when we are talking about complex workflows, it is likely that there will be multiple processes, projects, or databases. Once we've defined which workflows need building, we can move to step 3 and create a detailed workflow map for each of the workflows. Workflow maps allow us to visualize the steps and decision points in a process. Therefore, this step is most applicable for process workflows, or project workflows with processes attached to them. A project itself does not require a workflow map. The workflow map will help us to define the blueprint and will serve as the base for what will eventually become a Monday map. Once a workflow map has been created, we move to step 4, the deep dive discovery, where we uncover additional information about the workflow through asking the workflow owner relevant questions. The information gained will help you make important decisions about how to convert the workflow into Monday solutions and features. Given the uniqueness of every workflow, there is not a predefined list of questions. However, we have defined the most important topics, which should help you get started. Being able to ask the right questions is a crucial skill for implementers of advanced workflows, and is something you will hone with experience. Before we dive into these topics, when it comes to project workflows, we first need to define the project characteristics, so we will always ask the following 4 questions. 1, how many projects are you managing at once? 2, how many tasks are in each project? 3, how complex is each project? And 4, are there dependencies? Now let's take a look at the topics which relate to both process and project workflows. Quantity. Depending on the volume of the entities, we might structure things differently. For instance, in a project workflow, if we have 10 tasks per project, we might manage them as sub-items. But if we have 100 tasks, we probably would manage them in their own boards. User management. How many members are expected to take part in the workflow? Do they work in teams? Decision making. For example, how does a client decide if a request is approved or not? Is there a scoring mechanism, which we could build using a formula column and conditional coloring? Ownership. For example, if there's a process, we'll need to understand who's in charge of each step. If it's different owners, we might add multiple people columns, which would change the overall structure of the board. Tools. Building on the high-level discovery, we'll want to know if their current tools are to be replaced with monday.com or integrated with it. Data flow. When does the data move from being managed by person or team A to person or team B? How does the data flow back and forth between them? Does data need to be shared? This topic will help us define the division of data between board, connections, mirrors, and automations. Standardization. Are there repetitive processes or projects? If so, we may want to create a template board as a base for future workflows. If the workflow entails the creation of standardized documents such as briefs or meeting notes, we might build a template work doc. Communication. How do the different users in the workflow communicate at each step? Which tools will they use to communicate with team members compared to external stakeholders? The answers will help us make decisions about communication within the workflow and the incorporation of features such as automations and integrations. Notifications. Who needs to be notified at every step of the process? For example, if a project should kick off upon the closing of a deal, we may want to notify the project manager each time the sales agent marks a deal as closed. Permissions. Is there any sensitive data in the workflow? Who should have access to the data? Who can edit the data? For example, a workflow owner may not want Team A's members to update Team B's members' tasks. For that, we can use board permissions. Column permissions can be added where there is a need to hide sensitive data, such as budgets, from certain groups of users. Reporting. What are the reporting needs? What data needs to be tracked? Who should access reports? At what cadence should reporting occur? Reporting needs will impact what data we need to track on the board and how. For example, if we want to report on the number of requests per month, we'll need a date column or a creation log to understand when each request was opened. Once we have completed the workflow map for all of the relevant workflows and run a deep dive discovery for each, we will build a blueprint in step 5. The blueprint is where you define the number of boards, what each group, item, or sub-item will represent, and the data flow between them. It will also show any dashboards and which board or boards the data is being pulled from. The final step is to use the blueprint and workflow map to build a Monday map. The Monday map is where we define the set of features we will build into our boards. When there is a process workflow, we will use the workflow map as a base to translate each step into features like column choices and automations. For project workflows, as there are no steps, we'll create our list of features based solely on the requirements of the client as defined in the deep dive discovery. Now you've learned the methodology for building advanced workflows. It's time to see it in practice. Choose your first use case and join one of our hosts to discover how to apply this methodology and learn best practices for its implementation.